The soft hum of music floated through the air, blending with the gentle clinking of champagne glasses and the low murmur of laughter. Every corner of the Silver Pines Hotel's grand ballroom glittered under the glow of towering crystal chandeliers. The marble floors gleamed like water. The long tables overflowed with gold-rimmed plates, fresh orchids, and candles flickering like tiny stars. This wasn't just another wedding. It was the event of the year. Because today, Matthew Kane, one of Florida's youngest millionaires, was finally moving on. Finally finding happiness again. For the past year, Matthew's name had been whispered everywhere, at country clubs, in news articles, at cocktail parties. The tragic loss of his wife, Emma, had made him a figure of heartbreak. People admired him for surviving. Some envied him for the fortune he still held. And many secretly wondered if he would ever love again. Now, standing proudly at the altar earlier that day, Matthew had vowed his heart to someone new, Vanessa Lockwood. Daughter of a prestigious judge, heiress to a cosmetics fortune, Vanessa was everything society adored, polished, poised, picture-perfect. And tonight was supposed to be perfect, too. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns raised their glasses high. Waiters weaved through the crowd carrying silver trays stacked with lobster, steak, and golden soufflés. A jazz band played soft, rich music from the corner of the room, filling the space with a dreamlike warmth. Matthew, tall and sharp in his custom black tuxedo, made his way across the floor, smiling, shaking hands, thanking guests. But deep down, something gnawed at him. A hollowness. An ache. No matter how dazzling Vanessa looked in her fitted diamond-white gown, no matter how grand the flowers, no matter how fine the wine, nothing quite filled the hole Emma had left. Still, Matthew pushed the feeling down. Tonight wasn't about sadness. It was about moving forward. Or so he thought. It happened just as he turned toward the banquet tables, ready to grab a plate like everyone else. Ready to act normal. Smile. Eat. He barely noticed the laughter around him. He barely registered Vanessa flashing a camera-ready smile as she posed for yet another photo. All his focus narrowed, like a camera lens snapping into place, on one figure. One woman. Standing at the end of the buffet line, balancing a tray of steaming food, was a young woman wearing a flowing red dress. Not a server's uniform. Not one of the hired waitstaff. A simple red gown, vivid and soft under the ballroom lights. Matthew's world tilted sideways. He stumbled, nearly crashing into a passing waiter. His glass of champagne slipped from his hand, hitting the marble with a sharp crack and scattering shards across the floor. Gasps rose from the guests nearby. But Matthew didn't care. He didn't even hear them. Because the woman in red. Her face. It was Emma. His Emma. The woman he had mourned. The woman he had buried. The woman whose grave he had visited every week, rain or shine. Yet there she stood. Hair braided loosely down her back. Skin glowing under the warm lights. Eyes shimmering with the same soft kindness he thought he had lost forever. And her body. Her body was unmistakably pregnant. Round, full, gently cradled by the thin fabric of her dress. Matthew's throat closed. His chest burned. His heart pounded so loud he thought it might break apart inside him. Around him, the world spun. He could faintly hear Vanessa's voice, calling out, confused. Matthew? Matthew, what's wrong? But it was like a radio too far away to tune in. The woman in red turned slightly, balancing her tray, and her eyes found his. For one frozen moment, their gazes locked. And in that moment, Matthew swore he saw it. Recognition. Sadness. And something else. A message. Emma's lips curved into the faintest smile, a sad, bittersweet smile that hit Matthew harder than any punch ever could. He took a step forward, his legs trembling under him. Emma, he croaked, the word barely a whisper. Emma, how are you? The woman blinked. The smile faded. And then, before he could reach her, before he could even blink, she turned and disappeared behind the catering station, swallowed by the crowd. Matthew lunged forward, pushing past stunned guests, ignoring Vanessa's increasingly angry cries. Ignoring the dozens of shocked, confused faces turning toward him. Emma! Wait! He shoved open the side door leading to the kitchen. But she was gone. Gone like a dream you wake from too fast. Gone like smoke through your fingers. Only the faint scent of her favorite lavender perfume lingered in the air. He stumbled back into the ballroom, dizzy, breathless. The music had stopped. All eyes were on him now. Vanessa was marching toward him, her white gown swishing around her feet, fury flashing in her blue eyes. Matthew! What are you doing? She hissed, grabbing his arm. This is our wedding. People are staring. What's wrong with you? Matthew barely heard her. All he could think, all he could feel, was the image burned into his mind. Emma. Alive. Pregnant. And serving food at his own wedding. What was happening? Was he losing his mind? Or was the past about to unravel his perfect new life right before everyone's eyes? The ballroom buzzed with murmurs and confused whispers. Dozens of eyes bore into Matthew Kane as he stood frozen, still staring at the empty space where the woman in red had been just moments ago. Vanessa tugged at his arm sharply. Matthew, you're embarrassing me, she hissed under her breath. What's wrong with you? Did you drink too much already? But Matthew didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was stuck, trapped in a whirlpool of memories that rushed back with a force he couldn't stop. Emma. Her smile. Her laughter. Her promises. Her death. The crowd slowly returned to their conversations, the music hesitantly picking back up, but the night had lost its shine. The fairy tale sparkle was gone. Matthew stumbled away from Vanessa, ignoring her furious whispers, and found himself at the edge of the ballroom, near a massive floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the hotel gardens. He pressed his palm against the cool glass and tried to breathe. How could Emma be here? How? She was gone. She was supposed to be gone. 1 year earlier. The memory hit him like a truck. It had been raining that night. The worst storm Florida had seen in years. The roads were slick, the wind howled like wolves, and the night was black as pitch. Emma had called him from the road, her voice shaky. Matt, I'm heading back from the doctor. The baby's fine, but they want me on bed rest. I'll be home soon, okay? I love you. It was the last time he ever heard her voice. An hour later, the police knocked on his door. A crash. A fire. They said it had taken hours to put out the flames. The car was totaled. Unrecognizable. They said, they had found a woman's body. Burned beyond recognition. They said dental records confirmed it was Emma. Matthew remembered dropping to his knees. Screaming. Breaking apart from the inside out. The funeral was small and private. Closed casket. He buried his wife and their unborn child that day. Or so he had believed. Back in the present, Matthew's breathing quickened. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Had they made a mistake? Was it someone else's body? Had Emma somehow survived, and no one told him? But why would she disappear? Why would she let him mourn her for a whole year, believing she and their baby were dead? None of it made sense. And worse, if Emma was alive, then what was she doing here? At his wedding? Serving food? 1,000 questions ripped through him, each one more painful than the last. Was she in trouble? Was she trying to send him a message? Or had she moved on? Was she hiding from him? The thought sliced deeper than he could handle. Suddenly, a soft hand touched his shoulder. He turned sharply, and found himself staring into the concerned eyes of Eleanor Reed, his late mother's best friend. A sharp, silver-haired woman who had known him since he was a boy. "Matthew," she said gently. "Come with me. We need to talk." Before he could question her, she guided him firmly out of the ballroom, down a quiet corridor lined with portraits of smiling brides and grooms from weddings past. The noise of the party faded behind them. In a small, private lounge, Eleanor closed the door and turned to face him. "I saw her too," she said quietly. Matthew's heart skipped. You saw her?" Eleanor nodded gravely. "I saw Emma. Clear as day. I don't know how it's possible, but it was her." Matthew sank into a leather armchair, his legs giving out. "This doesn't make sense," he said, running a shaky hand through his hair. "She's supposed to be gone." Eleanor sat across from him, her face lined with worry. "Listen to me, Matthew. Stranger things have happened. Maybe someone didn't want you two to be together. Maybe someone lied." Matthew stared at her, his mind spinning. "But why would she be working at my wedding? Why not just come to me?" Eleanor hesitated, looking down at her hands. "Because maybe she can't. Maybe someone is keeping her away. Or maybe she's trying to protect you." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "Protect me from what?" he whispered. Eleanor shook her head. "I don't know. But I do know this: if Emma is alive, she's in danger." Matthew sat there, stunned, as the truth slowly took root in his mind. He hadn't lost Emma. He hadn't lost their child. They were still out there. But something, or someone, had torn them apart. And now, they were back. At his wedding. Sending a message. Begging him to find the truth. But as Matthew opened his mouth to ask more questions, Eleanor's phone buzzed sharply. She glanced at the screen, and her face paled. "Matthew," she said in a low voice. "We need to leave. Now." Matthew shot to his feet. "Why? What's happening?" Eleanor looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Someone doesn't want you to find Emma. And they're watching you right now." The hallway outside the lounge seemed to stretch endlessly, the soft yellow lights flickering slightly as if sensing the danger lurking in the air. Matthew's heart hammered against his ribs as Eleanor pulled him quickly along the corridor, her grip surprisingly strong for someone her age. "Eleanor, slow down. Tell me what's going on." Matthew hissed. She didn't answer. Not until they reached a back stairwell hidden behind a maintenance door. Only then did she pause, glancing around nervously before speaking in a low, urgent whisper. "Listen to me carefully, Matthew. There are people at your wedding who don't want you to know Emma's alive. And they'll do anything to keep it that way." Matthew stared at her, feeling like the ground beneath his feet was cracking open. "Who?" he demanded. "Who would want that?" Eleanor's eyes darted down the stairwell, checking for movement. "People close to you. People you trust." Matthew's mind raced. "Close to me? People at my wedding? People I call family?" It didn't make sense. And yet, a dark, cold feeling settled in his stomach. "You need to find Emma before they do," Eleanor continued urgently. "You need to know the truth before it's too late." Before Matthew could ask more, footsteps echoed down the main hallway. Heavy. Purposeful. Coming closer. Eleanor grabbed Matthew's arm and yanked him down the stairs, her heels clicking sharply on the metal steps. They emerged in the hotel's lower kitchens, a bustling maze of stainless steel counters, ovens, and busy chefs shouting orders. But even here, among the noise and heat, Matthew felt the danger breathing down his neck. He stuck close behind Eleanor as they weaved through the kitchen staff, dodging carts of food and trays of desserts. Where are we going? He asked breathlessly. To someone who can help, Eleanor said. Finally, they slipped out a side door into the humid night air. The hotel's massive garden stretched before them, rows of roses and tall hedges sculpted into perfect designs. But it wasn't the beauty Matthew noticed. It was the figure standing near the fountain. A woman. In a red dress. Emma. His breath caught in his throat. Emma, he shouted, breaking into a run. She turned. Her eyes widened in shock. She took a step backward, scared. No, wait. Please. Matthew cried out, his voice cracking. He reached her just as she turned to flee. Gently but firmly, he grabbed her arm. Emma, it's me. It's Matthew. She froze. Slowly, hesitantly, she looked up at him. Their eyes met. And in that moment, every wall Matthew had built around his heart crumbled. She was real. Warm. Breathing. Tears filled Emma's eyes as she pressed a trembling hand against his chest. Matt, she whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to see me like this. Matthew pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid she would vanish again. Emma, how are you alive? What happened? Why didn't you come to me? Emma sobbed softly against him. I wanted to, Matt. I wanted to. But they wouldn't let me. He pulled back just enough to see her face, pale, scared, but still so beautiful it hurt to look at her. Who? He demanded. Who kept you away from me? Emma's mouth opened, but before she could answer, a sharp voice rang out across the garden. There you are. Matthew spun around. Standing under the archway, framed by the soft glow of garden lights, was Vanessa. Still in her wedding gown. Still looking every bit the perfect bride, except now, her face twisted with fury. And behind her stood two large men in black suits, bodyguards. Step away from her, Matthew, Vanessa said, her voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Matthew tightened his grip protectively around Emma. Vanessa, what is this? He barked. What are you doing? Vanessa smiled coldly. Finishing what should have been finished a year ago. Matthew's blood ran cold. What did she mean? What had really happened to Emma? And how far was Vanessa willing to go to keep her secret? Before he could react, the bodyguards began moving toward them. Fast. Emma squeezed his hand. Run, Matt, she whispered desperately. Matthew didn't waste a second. At Emma's desperate whisper, his instincts took over. He grabbed her hand and ran, cutting sharply through the garden's winding paths, their feet pounding against the cobblestone trails. The scent of crushed roses filled the air as they darted between manicured bushes and towering hedge walls. Behind them, Vanessa's furious voice screamed through the night. Stop them. The two bodyguards chased after them, closing the gap fast. Matthew's heart pounded painfully against his ribs. Not just from fear. But from rage. Confusion. Heartbreak. How could the woman he thought he loved, the woman he had just married, turn out to be the monster who tore his life apart? This way. Emma cried, pulling him toward a narrow service path that snaked behind the hotel. The path was half hidden, used only by the groundskeepers. In the moonlight, it was nothing but a thin ribbon of dirt and shadows. They sprinted down it, the sounds of angry shouting growing fainter behind them. But Matthew knew it wasn't over. Not even close. When they finally stumbled into the parking lot behind the hotel, Matthew yanked open the door of a catering van. He and Emma ducked inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. For a moment, they just sat there, gasping for air, the van's interior smelling of coffee and plastic trays. Matthew turned to Emma, his chest still heaving. Talk to me, Emma. Please. What happened? Why did Vanessa do this? Emma wiped her eyes, her hands trembling badly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. It all started the night of the accident. Emma remembered it like it was yesterday. She had just left the doctor's office, thrilled and terrified by the news. Her pregnancy was risky, but if she stayed on strict bed rest, there was hope. She had called Matthew immediately, her heart full of love. She couldn't wait to get home to him. But she never made it. As she drove, a black SUV had pulled up beside her, flashing its lights. Thinking it was just a reckless driver, she tried to speed up. But the SUV rammed into her car, forcing her off the road. She crashed into a ditch, the world spinning violently. Before she could even unbuckle her seatbelt, masked figures yanked her from the wreckage. One of them held a syringe. She fought, screamed, but the needle pierced her neck. Everything went black. When she woke up, she was in a dim, concrete room. Alone. Terrified. And Vanessa Lockwood was there. Smiling. "You're going to disappear, Emma," Vanessa had said calmly. "Matthew is meant for bigger things. For me. Not you." Emma begged. Pleaded. Told her about the baby. Vanessa just laughed. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll take good care of the child, after Matthew forgets you ever existed." They faked the crash. Bribed officials. Falsified the dental records. And while the world mourned Emma Kane, Vanessa wormed her way into Matthew's shattered heart. Emma had been held captive for months. But when she finally escaped, heavily pregnant and broken, she had nowhere to go. She couldn't go home. Couldn't risk Vanessa finding her again. So she hid. She took odd jobs under fake names. Anything to survive. And tonight, she had been working as a server, desperate for money, never knowing it was Matthew's wedding she had stumbled into. Until she saw him. Back in the van, Matthew's fists clenched at his sides, shaking with fury. "She destroyed our lives," he said through gritted teeth. "And now she wants to finish the job." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was going to run after tonight. I just needed to see you one last time." Matthew turned to her fully, grabbing her trembling hands in his. "You're not running anymore, Emma. We're ending this. Together." But before they could plan their next move, the van's back doors rattled violently. The bodyguards had found them. Matthew's eyes darted around. There had to be a way out. There, a second door near the front. He ripped it open, dragging Emma with him. They tumbled out into the parking lot, only to be met by blinding headlights. A black car screeched to a stop in front of them, and out stepped Vanessa herself, her wedding gown now torn and dirted, her face twisted with pure hatred. "You should have stayed dead, Emma," Vanessa hissed. "Now you'll both disappear. For good this time." Matthew shielded Emma with his body, his mind racing for a way out. They couldn't outrun her again. Not this time. They needed help. Fast. Just when it seemed all hope was lost. Another set of headlights blazed from the far side of the parking lot. A black SUV came roaring toward them, fast and loud. The door flew open. And out stepped Eleanor, holding a phone in one hand, and a badge in the other. "FBI," she barked. "Drop your weapons and step away from them, now." Vanessa's face drained of all color. The bodyguards froze. Chaos exploded around them as more black SUVs screeched into the lot, federal agents pouring out with guns drawn. Emma collapsed into Matthew's arms, sobbing with relief. But Matthew's eyes stayed locked on Vanessa. The woman who had almost stolen everything from him. And he knew. This wasn't over yet. Not until every secret was dragged into the light. The parking lot blazed with flashing red and blue lights. Agents in dark suits swarmed the scene, shouting orders, drawing weapons, taking control. Vanessa, once so poised and polished, now stood frozen like a criminal caught in a spotlight. Her wedding dress hung off her shoulders, dirty and torn, her perfect hair now a wild, tangled mess. And Matthew Kane, the man she had tried to destroy, stood tall in front of Emma, shielding her with every ounce of strength left in him. The lead FBI agent, a tall woman with sharp eyes, approached, flashing a badge. "Vanessa Lockwood, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of fraud." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed uselessly, like a fish gasping for air. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As two agents roughly grabbed Vanessa's arms and cuffed her, she finally snapped. "He was supposed to forget you," she shrieked at Emma, spitting with rage. "He was supposed to marry me. You were nothing. Nothing." Matthew's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, towering over her. "You were right about one thing, Vanessa," he said coldly. "I did forget who I was for a while. But now, thanks to Emma, I remember everything that matters. And you? You're the one who's nothing." Vanessa screamed and kicked as she was dragged away, her shrieks fading into the night. For a long moment, the parking lot was silent except for the crackle of radios and the hum of police vehicles. Finally, Matthew turned back to Emma. She was crying, but not out of fear. Out of relief. Out of pure, overwhelming release. He crossed the distance between them in 3 steps and pulled her into his arms. For the first time in a year, for the first time since he thought he had lost everything, Matthew Kane was whole again. 2 months later. The morning sun poured golden light across the rolling green hills of Havenwood Ranch, Matthew's private estate far from the chaos of the city. Birds sang. The air smelled of wildflowers and fresh earth. And inside the cozy stone house at the top of the hill, life bloomed once again. Matthew sat on the porch swing, his arm wrapped tightly around Emma, who leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Her belly, full and round, moved gently under her sundress as their unborn daughter kicked. "She's strong, just like her mama," Matthew said softly, kissing Emma's forehead. Emma smiled up at him, her eyes glowing with happiness he thought he'd never see again. "And stubborn like her daddy," she teased, nudging him playfully. They both laughed, real, full laughs that carried out into the open air. The legal mess with Vanessa was almost over. Her trial was set. Her crimes had been exposed publicly. Her wealthy family had disowned her. Justice would be served. But Matthew and Emma didn't think much about that anymore. They were focused on something bigger. Something better. They were focused on building a life worth fighting for. As Matthew watched Emma run her hand gently over her belly, his throat tightened with emotion. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "I thought my life ended that night." Emma looked up at him, tears shining in her eyes, but this time, they were happy tears. "You didn't lose me, Matt. I found my way back. We both did." He cupped her face in his hands, his voice shaking. "Never again, Emma. Never again will anything come between us." She nodded, her hand covering his. "Never again." The wind picked up gently, carrying the scent of blooming magnolias across the hills. In the distance, the first beams of sunlight touched the new stables Matthew had built, a promise of a new beginning. A family. A future. And a love that not even death, or betrayal, could destroy. Matthew Kane had been a millionaire, a husband, a broken man. Now, he was something far greater. He was whole. He was home. And as he pressed a soft kiss to Emma's lips, he knew one unshakable truth. True love never dies. It only finds its way home. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.